Nation of Islam, and he had to he had to take his shahada in a court in Jeddah. He said, the other thing is, I was shocked that Elijah was saying that all white people are devils. He says, but I'm praying. I'm here in Arafat, sleeping next to a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Muslim brother from Germany, and another one from Scotland, and another one from Turkey, and another one from Jordan, and they are whitest of white, blondest of blonde, bluest of blue eyes. Certainly they would be considered to be white people, but they're not devils. These are my Muslim brothers. He says, I'm sitting here in Arafat with people from all over the world who have no other reason to be brothers except because of Islam. And I have pronounced La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sincerely, and I rebuke my connection with the Nation of Islam because I realize now that they're just a deviant group. Now he wrote that letter, which was a shock to everyone, and it was published in the New York Times, December the 13th, 1964. When those of us who respected Malcolm, who also respected the Nation of Islam, I was never a member of the Nation of Islam because I couldn't accept the fact that they're saying God is a black man, white man, or any other kind of man. I never believed that. I never went for that. I like their habits. I like the militants. I like a lot of things I saw in them, but I never accepted their beliefs and never joined them. But we were all impressed when Malcolm said that he had become an official Muslim, a universal Muslim, according to the doctrines of the Quran and following of that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When I read that as a non-Muslim, and I read it as a non-Muslim, I began to think about Islam. That was when I first began to think myself about this faith called Islam. A lot of people don't know this, but Malcolm made the commitment that day when he was writing that letter that he felt that God had charged him with the responsibility to be a representative, an ambassador to the African American Muslims in North America, which he felt, or not to the African American Muslims, but to the African American people, the ex-slaves, that he should be an ambassador for them, to get them back their rights, to take America to court for their enslavement of these people for 400 years. So Malcolm began to articulate this representation. And it was then that the FBI, the CIA, and Elijah Muhammad began to plot and plan for the death of Malcolm. I said December the 13th. Malcolm began his preaching after he made a tour of 9 Muslim countries, where he met 7 heads of states, where he was given the highest honor that you could think of. Malcolm arrived back in America where some of us were able to meet him for the first time. That's where I met. I was able to meet El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, I think that it was January the 9th. January the 9th or January the 11th. Myself and another group of people, we sat on a roof in the cold all night because the streets was already full. We couldn't get a place in the street. We found out where he was going to stand at, and we stood on that roof all night. And when Malcolm came out, 8:30 that morning, in Harlem, the streets of Harlem was full. It was almost like it was Hajj. There had to be 35 or 40,000 people filling the streets of Harlem just to see Malcolm. Not Muslims, only people who had been moved by his inspiration. Well, we were on the roof that day, and we didn't see him on the ground, but we saw him from the top. And we felt that we were the luckiest people. Malcolm saw us on that roof up there, and he asked one of his, because he had security, "What are those little guys up there on that roof up there? Tell them to come down here." And we got a chance to meet him and shake his hand that day. That's as much of a connection that I ever had with Malcolm, the day that we met him and shook his hands. So I don't idolize him, and I can only say that from a spiritual point of view, he's like a mentor. He's like a spiritual father for us. So many of us who were contemporaries of Malcolm, we sort of call ourselves son of a prince, because to us, Malcolm, or El-Hajj Malik, was a prince. So I've talked to you somewhat about the man, Malcolm X. I want to talk now about what he considered to be his mission. His mission was to use Islam to give dignity and reform and new consciousness to the Afro-American people, or the people of African descent in the northern hemisphere. This was his mission. And to give them Islam, but not to force Islam upon them, but to feed them Islam gradually to help reform them, give them a new consciousness, and allow them to then make the choice between what they're following and what Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said. Now Malcolm had a great mission, with great inspiration, with huge intentions and sincerity. But unfortunately, from January the 13th to February the 25th, that didn't allow Malcolm much time to pursue his mission. How much time was that? A month and a week. A month and 2 weeks, in fact. Malcolm lived a month and 2 weeks from the time that we saw him at that lecture. He was assassinated at the Audubon Ballroom in the Bronx on February the 25th. During that stormy 6 weeks, Malcolm said, "I know I'm a walking dead man. I've received threats by phone. My wife has received threats by phone. My car has been attempted to be blown up. I've been poisoned while I was in France." Malcolm said clearly through the news and interviews and everything that his life that he had already been targeted, and that he knew that the government of the United States, the some international agencies, and the Nation of Islam were conspiring to kill him. But Malcolm refused to stop. He said, "This is my mandate. I have to do this. If I die in the process, I ask Allah to accept this as a sacrifice from me." Now Malcolm at this time had 5 daughters. When he arrived February the 25th at the Audubon Ballroom to give that lecture, his wife was in the front seat, just like you're sitting here, with his 5 daughters. When Malcolm was killed, gunned down that day in the Audubon Ballroom, it was in front of his 5 daughters and his wife. That tragic ending of the man was when the actual message unfolded. I can literally say to you that today, when Malcolm became a Muslim, there may have been, at the most, from our recollection, at the most, there were 72,000 Muslim converts in the United States of America. Maybe 72,000. This was what year? 1965. In October of that same year, I became a Muslim. And from the organization that I was a part of called Darul Islam, Territory of Islam, because that was our mission, that was our vision, to establish an Islamic territory someplace in the Western Hemisphere. That movement, we went out across the United States to do our census, to find out what's going on and what are the dynamics, and to find out some statistics. By our estimation, there were approximately 82,000 converts in the United States at that time who were actually Muslims. Well, to give you an idea of what the vision of Malcolm, the energy of Malcolm, the sacrifice of Malcolm, and others like Malcolm, what it has produced. Today, of the 8 million Muslims in North America, 3 million of those Muslims are new Muslims. So in 50 years, this is the year 2005, isn't it? What month is this? January. Almost 50 years to the day, there are 3 million Muslims. And all those 3 million Muslims remember, as a part of their inspiration, the sacrifice of El-Hajj Malik Shabazz. Now I say El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, not Malcolm, because Malcolm died. Malcolm died when he arrived in Jeddah. Malcolm died when he took his shahada in that court. Meaning that person, that consciousness, that commitment to that false belief, that mixed up aberration, it died. And what was born that day was El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, as he chose to call himself. His mission, his message, it changed radically, completely. And although he died what we would consider to be prematurely, we know that nothing is premature.